Okay, well, we can get started. We only have 90 minutes in the session here, and we hope to be able to go through some pretty neat things. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good afternoon or good evening or late evening, wherever you are joining us from. I'm Dave Jones. I'm with Storm Center Communications, and I'm the co-chair of the Disaster Lifecycle Cluster. And we also have Karen Moe, who is the other co-chair of the Disaster Lifecycle Cluster. We'll be leading you through this session today. And really what we hope to do is to motivate your thoughts, your thinking in how you might be able to bring some of your talents to the table here in the Disaster Lifecycle Cluster. We're going to be talking about the ECIP Ecosystem of Innovation, showing how it works, and then taking you through that information. And so the first thing I'd like to do before we start and I dive into this is to make sure that you sign in on the Google Doc that is part of this session here. And to do that, just please list your name, affiliation, contact information, and all that sort of stuff. That way we can get back in touch with you. And we'll be using that Google Doc as well for getting your input, getting your thoughts. And also joining us is Sean, who is our ECIP fellow. Sean is going to be running the Slido poll, and she will put that up on the screen live when we're there to take a poll. And we'll do that as soon as I give you a little bit of background, because we're figuring that, many of you who are coming into this session may not know a lot about the ECIP Disaster Lifecycle Cluster. What is it we do? We're one of many clusters within the ECIP Federation. And, because we're community driven, you can have an idea, and you can see if others want to create a cluster to address that idea or challenge or problem or innovation or things like that. And so the Disaster Lifecycle Cluster came together several years ago when we just kept seeing this uptick in disasters and wanting to understand how data is collected, how it's processed, how it's stored, and how it's served to address disaster response. And certainly it's gotten into mitigation, preparedness, recovery, all of those important aspects of the disaster life cycle. And so this is a poster that we put together in the winter meeting of 2020, where we talked about this big idea. And Karen did a lot of the communication when the poster was up, and we had our poster sessions. And remember when we used to be able to get together in person? Hopefully that'll return soon. But the big idea was enabling and evolving operational readiness levels for data. The pull for this came from the utility industry, where Karen and I sit on weekly telecons with the All Hazards Consortium. Tom Moran is the executive director, and they have participants from a lot of the utility industries, utility companies around the country, from emergency management organizations, from states all around the country, from the food, fuel, transportation, and medical supply sectors. And we talk a lot about how to put data to work. And so out of that conversation, I've been a part of those meetings every Friday for now almost 6 years. Mm-hmm. And it's, the utility responders said, you know what, there's a lot of data out there. There's a lot of information. We don't know what data we can trust and what data we can't trust. We don't know if a nice looking graphic is coming from, somebody who's 10 years old that just learned how to use their iPad, or it's come from a trusted source. So they really drove this concept of the operational readiness level. They wanted to look at data that was presented to them and have an ORL number associated with it. And so we kind of took the technology readiness levels from NASA. You know, they go 1 through 9, 9 being the most ready. Well, the utility industry wanted to turn that around because they think of 1 as we're number 1 and number 1 is the best. So, and they said, we don't want 9. 9 is too much. We want like 4 or 5. And so we worked with them and talked with them and came up with ORLs 1 through 4. Where you can see here in the poster, most trusted and reliable data set, ORL 1. And when we talk about this, they all have high trust levels, these ORL numbers. It's just whether or not they're reliable for timeliness. For example, like a Landsat image. Boy, that'll be really reliable if that Landsat image is being used to understand where burn scars are in the process of a wildfire, or after the wildfire ends. But if somebody needs it while the wildfire is burning and the Landsat satellite doesn't pass over for 16 more days, it may not be as useful for their decision-making process. So we found that ORL levels really do focus on use cases as well. So we had these examples of 30-second decisions because the utility crew said, look, we make 30-second decisions. We need to look at something and make the decision. We have people and parts moving by the thousands all around the country, and we need to make these decisions and be able to back it up with trusted data. So here's Karen giving her talks about the poster at the ECIP meeting in the winter. See, they're real people in that picture. They were breathing and in person and all that stuff. And then we also had, as part of a side meeting with the ECIP winter meeting, we called in some members of the All Hazards Consortium and talked about geospatial data, processing information. What do utilities need? What do they trust? How can they get access to it? And all that sort of stuff. So that was really very, very exciting. And so then we modified the poster. This is the winter meeting this past winter in January, where we kept that same big idea, but then we started to put together this ECIP clusters and how they could accelerate what we're trying to do. And it really turned into what we're calling now an ECIP ecosystem of innovation, a way in which any member of a cluster, any member of ECIP, anybody who wants to participate in ECIP can come up with, hey, we're doing some cool stuff with machine learning, like this morning we saw in the opening session. We're doing stuff with AI, or we're doing some things with Google Earth Engine that we think might be able to plug in somewhere. We're not sure where, but might plug in somewhere in the disaster lifecycle cluster. So, so we identified these, ECIP acceleration. We identified operational application areas that these are just a few. It's not limited to these. And then how we might be able to apply operational readiness levels to them so we can take this stuff and show it to the participants in the All Hazards Consortium. The All Hazards Consortium has 45,000 members. And so now we really, Karen, through her participation, has really built up the ECIP Federation as a source of expertise to talk about data, to talk about data access and all that sort of stuff. So this is where we do our brainstorming and where we do our interaction and collaboration. So we can take some of these ideas back to the All Hazards Consortium, explain what's percolating within the ECIP series of collaborations that go on every month, and see how we can then bring it to the All Hazards Consortium as either an idea or a sample data service or a real product. So there's really no limit to that. And so during the January meeting last year, we also had a session in the disaster lifecycle cluster called California Burning, Putting Data to Work, where we talked about collaborating across agencies. How can we get data faster from agencies to decision maker? if something's being produced in a certain way that it's not easily accessible, let's work with that agency to make it easily accessible, put it in front of real users, and then provide feedback to those agencies and organizations. We talked about collaborating with the community resilience cluster so we can develop credible communications with the public. How might we take these geospatial dashboards and present them to the public in such a way where science data is easily understood? You don't need a master's, you don't need a doctorate, you don't even need a bachelor's degree to understand where the fire is, where the smoke's headed, and that you need to get out of there. So the bottom bullet is probably really the most exciting one, which is working with clusters to accelerate this ecosystem of innovation. And so we like doing word clouds. We're going to do that here in just a few minutes when Sean brings up the poll, a couple of the polls. So here's our timeline, and this starts just last year and it goes out to 2023. So it's kind of in the forecasting business a little bit, where we had California burning in winter meeting of 2021. Right here in the summer of 2021, we're talking about delivering trusted data to decision makers, identifying data and sources. We want to remind you of the ECIP lab opportunity for funding and the Funding Friday, but we're going to get into more of that here shortly. But then the next winter meeting, the one in January coming up in 2022, perhaps focusing, and this isn't set in stone. So if some of you say, hey, why don't we focus on this? It's going to become a candidate for what we focus on. But preparing your data to become ORL kind of classified, testing new services with AI and ML. So once you leave from this session, hopefully you feel energized. And over the next 6 months, you might come back in the winter meeting saying, hey, disaster lifecycle cluster, we have these services we want to test. Can we put them in to your sharing environment? And so that would be awesome. And then what kind of initial feedback from this meeting are we getting from all the participants of the All Hazards Consortium weekly telecons? And then in the summer of 2022, cross-cluster innovation. What can we bring from ECIP clusters to feed this whole ecosystem of innovation? There's some really cool things happening there. So are there things that are happening that we could plug in and test with existing users? And then in the winter of 2023, community-driven solutions for disaster challenges. Throw this out to the ECIP public and say, okay, we have the plumbing in place to deliver all sorts of data and services and things like that into a wide variety of federal agencies, state agencies, private sector organizations. Now, what can we get from the ECIP community? What projects are you working on? If you're a student working on something, that would qualify. You know, are you somebody who's working on testing a product or a service and you just can't reach somebody to get feedback? That would be a great one. And if you're a federal agency saying, you know what, we're starting to adhere to the Federal Geospatial Data Act and we have to share more of our data and we want to put more of it in the hands of decision makers, how can we do that? ECIP's the place to do it. So
Dave, I
yes.
might also say to that note that Tom Moran at the All Hazards Consortium has been a big proponent of leveraging federal data sets, whether they're directly from the agencies or through teams that are using those data sets to create products. So he's quite open to seeing those data sets come in.
Exactly. Thanks, Karen, for that. And that's really very important because Tom has that connection with states. I mean, I was on a call just the other day and they had, let's see, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, North Carolina, Maryland and Virginia, Illinois, and then there was another state all on there talking about how they have to coordinate to enable utility trucks to move through their states during disasters. And so these are private sector liaisons that are official positions within the state emergency operations centers. So they're really out there looking for ways in which they can work with the private sector more and they can leverage data more. And guess what? In those state organizations, they don't have anybody that focuses on data. They don't have it. They don't have the resources. They need to have people come up to them that they trust, that they've built relationships with, that can then introduce them to various data sets. So yeah, thanks, Karen, for that. That's great. So this is a diagram of the ECIP ecosystem of innovation. And it's kind of like noodly and you know, a lot of things going on, but essentially, I'm just using the discovery cluster and community resilience cluster just as examples. We have drone, public-private partnership, ag and climate, many other clusters. So we're not eliminating any clusters at all. If anybody has ideas for a widget, which could be a data service, a tool, machine learning, AI that can spit out a data service, then we can put that into the disaster lifecycle cluster, and we have working relationships with all these organizations right now. So DHS, NOAA, the National Weather Service, the state of Florida, NASA, USGS. So we can approach these organizations and say, how does this fit into what you guys are trying to do? Or does this help accelerate the delivery perhaps of data sets that you have into the decision-making environment? That's right where we focus in the disaster lifecycle cluster. And then these green arrows coming back represents feedback from the disaster lifecycle cluster that can go, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to do, I think I have like a spotlight. Yeah. So we can go here from the disaster lifecycle cluster back into the discovery cluster, back into community resilience, or you know, any other cluster or individual who has something that they want to share. You can provide that feedback so you can refine that process. You can refine that product. Hey, maybe it's another data format that you need to produce your data service in, or is that data service reliable? Is it coming from your migration to the cloud? Is it coming from a server on your desk, which might not be a good thing to do in these days? So, so that's kind of what we're doing. And so I'm, you know, in the disaster lifecycle cluster could be something focusing on advancing equity. You have a database of certain information. Fair data principles, we heard those talked about this morning. AI, ML, GIS, web services. You have heard some users talk about what they need, and they really need to get access to information. What is that? Let's talk about it. And then what ECIP lab proposal might you write that might feed into the disaster lifecycle cluster so we can accelerate that result into an organization that says, hey, you know, this is really intriguing. We have a little bit of funding that we want to put to this to take it to phase 2 or something like that. So we're really all about addressing real world issues through these use cases. And so, so now I'm gonna maybe stop this and go forward, hopefully. There we go. Yeah, so what I want to talk about quickly here and show you an example is an example of a success within the ecosystem of innovation. So I'm going to single out CDAC, the Socioeconomic Data and Applications Center up at Columbia University. They're a NASA data center, and they have put together their specialists in population and other things around the world. And they've developed this hazard and population mapper app. They have a mobile application that you can see right down there, and it really focuses on, you know, really mapping hazards to population, which is very, very important. So they set up services to serve that that app, and we spoke with Bob and said, hey, can those services serve other things too? Like, can we get the REST endpoints for this data service? And so Bob was like, yeah, we can do that. So we did an experiment with GeoCollaborate. GeoCollaborate is a real-time data sharing and collaboration environment that we're using to connect with all these folks. It's a Storm Center innovation under the Small Business Innovation Research Program from the federal government. So federal dollars help to develop this capability. And we said, we want to be able to circle an area, say in the cone of uncertainty for a landfalling hurricane, and we want to get population information back. And so after we did some testing and all that sort of stuff, lo and behold, the service worked. It motivated the Hurricane Research Division to say, wow, you know what? When we're flying in these hurricane planes, we kind of forget how many people are impacted by the expected area where this hurricane is going to make landfall. And so when they saw this, it added a new dimension and appreciation for the job that they do flying into the hurricanes on those bumpy rides going through the eye of the storm. So since then, this has spread, and even the National Weather Service used it and is continuing to use it in tabletop exercises. And I'm going to play this short video. This is not me talking. This is the National Weather Service having a live tabletop exercise with the state of New York, their emergency operations folks around the state. The use case was a retrospective on Hurricane Irene in 2011. And the National Weather Service can now produce inundation layers using geospatial services that are output from the National Water Model. So we're talking about high-end computing, spitting out where they think inundation is going to happen, visualizing that on a high-res map, serving it as a data service through GeoCollaborate, and sharing that data for the first time ever with the state of New York. So this is one of the meteorologists there doing their briefing.
Forecast. We'll try and highlight the area that's going to be inundated and see just how many people might be affected by that. So here's the tool right here, this population calculator. I'll click on it and I'm going to select, I can select a fixed shape like a polygon or a triangle or an ellipse, but I'll go with the freehand polygon because I want to just draw around the inundated area. So I'll select draw, and I might kind of move right along this whole inundated area like this. And I'm bringing it down to these additional communities, cross over, and then, I mean, I'm getting a little wide here, but so then I'll just select that as the polygon, and we'll see if the tool will come back with some estimated population. This is leveraging population data from, here we go, from the socioeconomic, the NASA Socioeconomic Data Application Center. And so we're looking at showing how population has changed over 5-year increments, but the current population in this area, we're looking at about 32, almost 3,300 people that might be affected. This tool is like I said, valuable to kind of get an estimate of, how many people we might be affected by an event such as this.
So we took this capability and tested it and put it in front of the Weather Service before they had these tabletop exercises, and they were floored. They were like, wow, we're leveraging another agency's expertise and bringing that into our operational environment that we can explain to a state how many people might be impacted. So, so this is really a great success. And so I'm going to go past this, and it looks like I'm going to, whoops. So we consider that a success. So if you have any ideas noodling in your head saying, oh yeah, I could do this, or we could do this with Google Earth Engine, or, if we can just spit out data services, then we can have a direct pathway into places like the National Weather Service. So I'm going to pause here because I want to first turn to Chen, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen because we would like to take a poll of who is in this session with us. And in this session, we would like for you to answer this poll. And I think Chen is going to put it in the chat where the chat is. Let's see. Oh, sorry. Yeah, right, Karen. Okay, sorry. So I just saw your comment. I didn't see your comment before. So let's go ahead and put up that poll, and please answer the first question. We want to know, what sector do you represent? You know, are you private sector, nonprofit, state agency, federal agency? Are you a student? You know, just kind of what area do you represent? And we'll turn that into a word cloud here live, which is great. We have a lot of federal government and private sector folks. Good to see students in there. That's awesome. So keep that coming. We'll let this go for another few seconds while you answer. And I'm not even sure how many people are on. I can't really monitor this while I'm sharing my screen, but yeah, keep it coming in. And Sean, just let us know when you think you see input to stop coming.
Okay, so I already pasted the Slido link to the chat box, so you can access it through the link I sent, or access it through the Kiko chat Slido tab poll.
Great.
We already got 27, 28 responses.
Okay, how many people do we have participating?
52.
52. Okay, so a few more of you. You can go. This is anonymous. You can put in your answers and answer this poll. This is a great way to do interactivity. You know, since we're not in person, to do it by using Zoom and the Slido poll. How this is all integrated. It's really quite awesome. So I see the number counting up there with 34. I'll stop when we get to 40. We'll go to the next one when we get to 40. So I can be like an auctioneer. We have 34. How about 38, 38, 38, 38? And so, so let's go now to the second question, Sean.
Okay.
That we wanted to ask. And Karen, I think it's the second, right? How many of these do we want to go through in the beginning here?
This is the second question. Enter a word to describe the data you may have or know about.
Okay, so this is great. So as we're talking about various use cases or things like that, think about a word that describes any data that you may have or you may want to work with or you're starting to work with. It doesn't have to be a specific data set. It can be anything regarding a domain or things like that. And so then we can build up this word cloud just to see where we're seeing the focus on for yeah, I see climate, ecological. This is great. Power grid outages. I love that one. That's a tough one, actually. Power grid outages. We used to think we could get it from a group called Eagle Eye at the Department of Energy. But I don't know, maybe they've opened it as of yet, but it was only open to other federal agencies to get Eagle Eye data. But we would love to test it. This is great. I love this input. It's great seeing responses to this. Yeah, NASA Science Mission Directorate. Yep, we'd love to see a lot more data from NASA and Earth data and all that sort of stuff. Oh, this is great. Yeah. Yeah, I know for utilities that where there's a group called poweroutage.us. I know the Weather Channel uses them and a bunch of other applications use them. That's from, I think, a retired person from the Department of Energy who put that together to scrape a bunch of utilities websites to put up that data for who's out of power and who isn't. So we're looking to get maybe perhaps more robust, trusted data services from an organization like the Department of Energy would be great. Okay, 35. That's great. Sarah, Karen, do we want to do the next one?
Yeah, one more question.
Okay, one more question, Sean, you can pull up. Are you interested in getting more involved to put your data or knowledge to work supporting the disaster life cycle and the disaster life cycle cluster? So this is something that's a pretty quick response, just yes or no. And don't worry, nobody's going to come knocking at your place of work or your house saying, okay, time to join and participate. We just want to make sure that you know about what we're doing and you have an interest in participating. We have monthly telecons. You can join some months. You don't have to join every month. There's no hazing. We don't do hazing, so that's great. And you can participate as often as you want. Wow, this is great. 33 participants, and a lot of you would like to participate. This is terrific. So, so Karen, I'm gonna, is it okay that I can turn it over to you? Because I did want to have Bob Chen talk, and I forgot if that was before or after you, Karen. I think it was before you, right?
Yes, it's before.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. So I mentioned before that we worked with CDAC, the Socioeconomic Data and Application Center. I'm on their users working group, or I just rotated off their users working group. So it was really awesome working with them. And I wanted to turn this over to Bob Chen so he could tell a little bit about the services and the history behind this. So Bob, thanks so much for being a part of the workshop today, and take it over.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Can you see my screen?
Yep, beautiful.
I'm glad I picked out my hurricane cartoon, which is not exactly relevant. It's relevant on a couple levels, especially if you want to estimate how many people stuck around during the hurricane or not. But anyway, so thanks for the intro and for the little demo. You know, I'm just going to try to make a couple quick points. I know we're already running behind. But I was sort of asked, give a little background. I mean, this is a service we started in 2010 using a previous version of our global population data sets called GPW version 3. And back then it was just the total number of people. Over the years, we've improved it, and now you can get, as you showed, multiple years, but you can also get age and sex breakdowns of population. And as you saw, it was kind of a initial effort to see how much of GIS functionality that normally requires someone with some GIS training to carry out. How much of that could you put easily into a web or app interface and make the query process easy enough, and then return results that, without needing someone needing GIS training or GIS software, that sort of thing. Oops. Get in the right place here and click, I guess. So, but honestly, over 10 years, or the beginning of the time, the adoption was slow. We created our own client. I should have said PES is it's a service compliant with Open Geospatial Consortium web processing service, but also REST specs. But only developers know how to get at that. And so we built a client that had functionality similar to what Dave showed. But even with the specs out there, we didn't see a lot of uptake from developers, whether that was awareness or complications. What was clear is, people needed to work closely with client developers like Dave's group at Storm Center in order to implement this kind of service effectively. And it took a lot of back and forth and work, but it was, in recent years, part of this overall effort that the cluster was dealing with the All Hazards Consortium and others. So, I think at the beginning, and I probably don't remember everything, but there were obviously some issues we expected when we were moving really from, a proof of concept prototype into this more operational environment. You're obviously potentially increasing your load on your servers. You have to try to operate 24/7 by 365. Not all academic institutions or even research centers operate that way. So thinking about that as an increased requirement was important. But there are also a lot of things we didn't quite expect, even simple things like how the polygons are handled changed over time. We were actually taking polygons from the Weather Service, and just one day out of the blue, they changed how they were dealing with nested polygons, and it broke the service. And we didn't know what was going on until a user pointed it out. We had someone do a very focused denial of service attack on our server that supports the PES. NASA had a big DNS change and network disruption at one point. It didn't affect us directly, but things that depend on the parts of the internet, other parts of the internet can still break your system. We've had a few incidents. I don't know, Dave, if I should have admitted at one point GeoCollaborate was returning 6 billion people to any query that someone submitted to GeoCollaborate. That took a few days to debug. And when you have a new version of a tool, you don't actually know who's drawing on it. So when you do an upgrade, sometimes you don't know if you're contacting everybody or if they're ready and have the resources to do the upgrade right away. So we were running two different versions of the service for quite a long time. And so that, I think one of the lessons is you just have to have that communication now between the client and service developers. And we're still in their infancy as far as, dealing with some of the things that come up, like, what happens when you're down for maintenance, or there are exceptions or problems. And, sometimes you only hear about things secondhand from someone who complains, and you don't hear it from directly. So there are a bunch of issues like that, I think, in operationalizing any service. So just to kind of wrap up, I found this cartoon recently. We're faced with a lot of different hazards. We're faced with a lot of different problems, and it seems like they're piling on and collaborating better than we are. So trying to get our tools to work together, not all, no one's going to have all the data centrally placed in a way that is up to date and perfect. We need distributed networks, decision support systems that operate in a distributed way with collaboration and trust. And as indicated in the ORL model, that's both organizational trust and technical trust. You have to have both of those working in concert. And you can't escape the need to work with the end users and stakeholders. And Dave and Karen's relationship with All Hazards, I think, was really unique, because they were willing to work both ways with us. And just to go back to the title, innovation can take some time. It doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it's a process of incremental improvement and building the resilience and capability so that it doesn't completely break or often break, and you know how to deal with it when it does. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Bob. That was great. And if you have any questions at all from hearing Bob talk or anything during the session, please put them into the chat, and we can get to those. And so I want to share back my slide here just to tell you where we are and where we're headed. Next, we're going to have Karen Moe. We're going to talk about a quick use case conversation that had happened within the All Hazards Consortium, and actually have an active call for all of you out there to see if you have data that might be relevant, which was a data request from a utility industry. So Karen, I'd like you to take it over.
Sure thing. So back in, I think it was probably March, April timeframe, we had a a virtual meeting of the All Hazards Consortium that was focused on operational readiness level activities and how the utility members are actually involved in setting the ORL for the data that they're going to use in their operations. So it's very much a member community-based evaluation of the data. And so they had gone through an example of some data sets and went through a online process tool that would ask the right kinds of questions about the data, its security levels, whether they're, how frequently it's updated. There's a contact person if you've got a problem, just a number of pretty basic questions about the data that allow the data then to go into the buckets of ORL 1, 2, 3, or 4. And in the process of doing that, at the end of that exercise, so we had several people there who were new to operational readiness levels. Tom Moran asked the question, if you could get just one data set to help you, in your response after a storm, what might that be? And somebody brought up tree canopy, that there was some knowledge that in the city of Washington, D.C., they actually have a database that describes their tree canopy. But could there be some kind of data like that in areas where a hurricane might hit, and so that you would have a little more information about what to expect in terms of damage from wind with tree canopy. So based on that request, I sent out a message in that same time frame asking the ECIP Federation for a data set. Does anyone have a data set that could address tree canopy? And fortunately, Christopher Small at the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory at Columbia did respond. He had done some analysis of Sentinel-2 data, land cover maps of New York City before and after Hurricane Isaias, which was August of last year. And it was a very hard-hitting storm. There was loss of life and flooding and winds. So he commented that the Sentinel-2 data is 10-meter data. He had collected data from a couple of weeks before the storm, June 16th, and the storm was on August 4th. And he had another data set of August 25th. So he had the before and after Isaias struck. The idea was that there were enough large trees blown down all over the city, New York City, that he felt the changes could be detectable. You're dealing with the red and green, the red substrate and green vegetation levels. And he said technically trees get illuminated in this process in the sensor's field of view, and it makes a difference whether it's tree canopy or trunk. And that the challenge was relating the different illuminations coming back from the field of view, those conditions on the two dates before and after. And he really felt it would be preferable to use 1 meter data, say from Worldview or Pleiades, but those processing centers cost money, and he wasn't able to go there. But that's the recommended approach you would take. But we decided to take that data and try it out. So Dave, I think you've got it next to give us a demonstration of what that might look like.
Well, thanks, Karen. I was sharing the screen of GeoCollaborate and just moving around some of the data and the satellite imagery that's here. This, the problem with using base imagery, obviously, that's provided with a lot of the geo browsers is that it's not current. And so the real challenge that the utility industry is kind of putting out there is, how can we get access, or is the data out there where we could have updated tree canopy information 4 times a year? And that way, when they could see where the most vulnerable parts of their system are when storms come. And so I'm just moving around a little bit here in Washington, D.C., just so you can see that there are trees around. Every city has trees around. Some have more than others. But this is really a question to you out there in this workshop, in this session. Do you know of any way that satellite imagery can be processed, whether it's through AI or machine learning, Google Earth Engine, that could send back sort of a tree canopy inventory or a look that could be done and processed 4 times a year for the utility industry? Somebody might come back and say, yeah, I know exactly how to do it because we're doing it, and here's how you can do it. We could then take that idea and that process, those descriptions, back to the All Hazards Consortium in our Friday telecons and say, all right, we request 5 minutes to talk about this because something might be percolating in the ECIP disaster lifecycle cluster. And so then if we can get those utility companies to be interested, even the association of those utility companies, EEI, the Edison Electric Institute, could, if they wanted to, invest in a way to get this information to their customers, to EEI's customers, which are all the investor-owned utilities. So that's kind of what we're talking about for this sort of challenge. Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go back to my PowerPoint here for a second, because we want to dive into our breakout session. And our breakout session, what that's going to do is share that. Hopefully you can see my breakout session prep here. One thing that we'd like you to think about, we're going to break out in groups for 20 minutes. It's going to be random. You didn't sign up for anything. We're just going to take the group of participants that we have here and divide them up into a certain number of breakout groups. So you can talk about, hey, I've been working on this data. I wonder if it would be useful to the disaster lifecycle cluster. Doesn't have to focus on tree canopy. That was just an example of how ideas percolate from the operational sector, and they can make their way right back into the disaster lifecycle cluster, and we can then present it to the entire ECIP Federation family. And so do you see opportunities to get involved? Most of you said you wanted to get involved. We'd love to hear how you would like to get involved, using what kind of data, what kind of processing, what kind of algorithms or data services. What use cases might you like to explore? You might say, hey, I have a data set that can tell when all the manhole covers are going to pop off. Hey, that'd be nice. Or have you done any work with Google Earth Engine or AI or ML? So what we like to say is dream it up. And I'm going to take a pause here to make sure I haven't missed anything before we go into our breakout sessions. So Karen, if I've missed anything, please let me know. And Sean, I think we've gotten through all the poll questions until after. So just make sure I'm on track.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Karen, I think, are we ready to go? Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we go into our breakout sessions?
I do believe we've got a spot in the notes for people to jot down ideas that come up.
Right. That's right. That's right. So use the Google Doc where you see the agenda in the Schedule. You can scroll down and you can add information in there for ideas that you've come up with, so we can capture those. At the end, we're going to need 3 takeaways, because we want some marching orders for this session for the winter meeting, because 6 months goes really quickly, and we want to make sure that we can jump on anything that's really exciting that you come up with. So I think without further ado, I'm just going to look here in the chat comments and see if I see anything. Let's see. I did see a comment about EPA, so we'll talk about that when we come out of the session. And yes, this data is not focused on any particular agency like NASA, NOAA, or USGS. You know, if EPA comes in and says, hey, we have data sets we want to use and all that, that could be some great ideas. So I think, Susan, what I'd like to do is ask you to kick off the breakout rooms, and you'll see, I think you have to say join the breakout room when a message comes up. Yep, there it is, inviting you to join a room. We'll have 20 minutes and then we'll automatically come back into this larger room. So go off and have fun, and we look forward to seeing you when you come back. And Karen and I and Sean will be in rooms as well.
Is anyone having trouble finding their room? I can move you if you need me to move you personally. Looks like you're getting there. Anybody else here need help getting to the breakout rooms? Just checking in here. We are in breakout rooms for another 5 minutes. If there's anyone who wants to be moved to a breakout room, just let me know, and I'm happy to get you off to a more lively discussion. Love when people start coming back.
I didn't think I'd press the button.
Oh. Well,
I must have clicked it. We were trying to decide who our spokesperson was going to be, and I had said it wasn't going to be me.
And you voted with your feet. Good job, Denise. Welcome back.
Well, Denise saying that promoted a stunning reaction from Rama.
Yeah, well, I think Rama could be our spokesperson then.
Actually, I was just saying to the group before I got swooped away that we may very well get back in touch with you and see if we can go ahead and have a follow-up discussion on some of the topics that we identified. We were in group 3, but I think across the board, we'd like to do that where we have the notes and can follow up.
Thank you, Karen, for the lovely breakout room session.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, we were in mid-discussion and but we did see the timer come down. So that's that's good. No, it's a really good talk. Karen, I want to sort of, do you want to take us through the next part? Or I also have on my, let me bring up my PowerPoint slide here. Okay. Okay, here we go. So here is the question. We're coming out of our breakout session. Thank you all for participating. I know sometimes, you know, it seems like it might be uncomfortable, but it's really great in throwing us together. And it's painless, actually. So what opportunities or barriers did you discuss? There's a Slido poll that Chen is going to bring up, and I'll stop sharing my screen, but you'll see the question, and maybe you can put in, you know, a word or a couple of words just so we can kind of capture what was talked about in each of the breakout sessions. So Chen, you can share that if you'd like.
Yes. Okay. Can you see it?
Yep, we can see it just fine. That's great.
Okay, great.
So in all the discussions, and you know, again, there's no right or wrong answers. We're really just looking to build upon our charge for the next 6 months as we evolve this ecosystem of innovation within the disaster lifecycle cluster. I know we definitely talked in our breakout about sharing of information, how it's tough to share between agencies and organizations. Yep, discoverability across repositories, definitely. It's really interesting. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say along those lines, Sophie, who was in our group, and she has spent a lot of time looking at this particular question. I think it would be great to invite her to one of our sessions just for a view of engaging community and what it takes and how important that is to understand their data needs.
That's great. And Sophie, since you're here on the line, I'm just looking at the our next disaster lifecycle cluster call is on August 5th, if you're around. So it would be nice to have you join us. I would love to talk more about that and learn from the things that you've been working on. And I know that you're really familiar with FEMA lifelines and things like that too. So that would be terrific.
Hey, Dave and Karen, thanks for that. I would definitely be happy to share my experience. So yeah, I should be around August 5th. I'd be happy to chat with you about how to prepare for talking with your group. Thank you.
Oh, that'd be great. Thanks. It's
Thank you.
4 o'clock Eastern. To be specific. No, that's terrific. This is great. Thanks for bringing all your input into this. Yeah, these are great. Fitness for purpose. Yep. given the same ORL. Absolutely. And, you know, to talk a little bit about the operational readiness level, we are seeing that it does have different applications for different use cases. So when you talk about that fitness for use in an operational readiness level, we believe that individual users for their use cases that they're working on will need to identify those ORL data sets that they want to plug into their GIS system, you know, that they want to make available when a certain hazard evolves. So, so yeah, this is great. 17 replies. Okay, that is good. And I'm going to go over here to my, okay. One of the things I want to mention, we have about 11 minutes here left. And I wanted to mention, I think, Sean, is that the last poll that we had to take?
We have one for key takeaways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that here in just a minute. Let me just share this slide here because I do want to remind everybody, and it was mentioned before earlier in the kickoff plenary session this morning, that there are opportunities for funding. So if you're a student, if you're somebody just looking because you say, you know, I have an idea, I might want to germinate this a little bit more, we really encourage you to submit a proposal to the Funding Friday, which is this week. And it doesn't have to be a long proposal to Funding Friday, or the ECIP Lab has opportunities. And that's the link. I know you can't click on the screen share, but maybe Sean, you can put that in the chat, maybe these links. And, you know, we just want to give you the opportunity to follow up on your ideas because we know there aren't any bad ideas. We know that some of the best ideas start from just one person having something that they might think is a little crazy. So, so we want to encourage you to go after these and please participate. Again, believe it or not, I forgot to make a slide on when our ECIP Disaster Lifecycle Cluster meetings happen. They're every month. And on the first Thursday of every month at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And so you can just Google ECIP Disaster Lifecycle Cluster meeting, and it'll come up and you'll have the connection information and all that sort of stuff. We also put out emails throughout the ECIP membership for people who want to join that cluster. Karen, I'm going to ask you if there's anything else that you would like to cover before we get here to the end.
Just that we're serious about following up with people on the various use cases, and as was brought up in the group I was in, it's not strictly disasters related. We're really seeing this ecosystem, the ECIP ecosystem of innovation idea as being applicable to a number of domains. And we think that the operational readiness levels likewise can be quite applicable to different domains. And we're hoping to find ways of moving these two ideas to basically get more of the ECIP data out into decision makers' hands. So yeah, we'll be following up with the notes that we have, and really thank all the inputs we got during the breakout.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, if you're a small business, if you're an entrepreneur, you're just starting up, or you're an established business, if you have data sets that you're thinking internally, you know, we should offer this as a service. We should get this out and in front of people. We can help to put that data in front of decision makers and provide some feedback. If you're an agency looking to make more of your data available in decision-making environments, yes, that's the kind of information that we're looking for, the kind of data that we're looking for, because the only way in many cases we're finding and discovering this data is through meetings like this. I mean, ECIP brings together all of us data geeks, right? And we want to put our information to work. And so in the disaster lifecycle cluster, that's what we focus on, is where that rubber meets the road in delivering data, putting it in front of people who may not have ever known it existed, may not have known it's even out there, but could be critical to their decision-making process. And you don't know that until you put it in front of them. And we have the ability to put it in front of them. So I'd like to take the last, maybe few minutes and ask Sean to put up the last poll, because we have to bring back 3 takeaways. So out of the entire discussion and the breakout sessions, we're looking for you to provide us with our marching orders forward, ideas and things like that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Sean, you can take the screen over and put up that poll question so we can get some input from you guys. Did you find this session helpful? Is it giving you some ideas for an outlet for some perhaps AI or ML work that you're doing? That's the kind of stuff that we're very, very interested in. Any other disaster ECIP cluster, we're definitely interested in working with you. Karen and I will be presenting at the data quality cluster on, I think, Rama, is that Wednesday night or Thursday night? It's like 7 o'clock Wednesday night, I think, 7 to 9:30.
It's Thursday.
Thursday. Thank you. So 7 to 9:30 Eastern time, so we can accommodate some of our friends around the world. And that's going to be a really interesting discussion as well. So please, let's go to the last Slido. And there's the link. I see Sean put it in. And
yes, I shared the Slido link for our last question, key takeaways. And I also shared the link Funding Friday ECIP Lab Opportunities link in the chat box. And I added the mailing list for disaster cluster and all mailing list link in the chat box as well. So you can sign up through there. We will send out our meeting information, and our meeting will be like first Thursday of every month, 4 to 5 Eastern time. Okay. And I also pasted the Zoom meeting for our monthly meeting.
Okay, you want to share your screen on the Slido poll? And yeah, I did see that question about EPA. Thank you for asking that again. Absolutely. We want to know about what EPA data sets do you have? What use cases do you see them applying in? And we would love to start to put some of that data in front of decision makers. Air quality information. I know Karen is very involved in the air quality cluster. We're very interested in that. We have merged the Air Now program data with the HER smoke model, so we can see where air quality is being impacted by wildfire smoke. That's great. So yes, absolutely. Please, I'll put my email in. Karen, you can put your email in to the chat, and there's mine. So please feel free to send me an email, send Karen an email. We may want to bring you into the cluster so you can describe a little bit about what data you're collecting, what's out there, what might you want to make available. The ORL process is a survey 1, 2, 3 form that you answer questions about the data, and it comes up with an ORL number. Now that process and those questions are still evolving. We've asked the data quality cluster, what are we missing in these questions, and what can we do better to assess this data in a way to give it a good ORL number. And we do have a decision tree spreadsheet or flow diagram for ORLs that we can share too. That's in our notes and in previous presentations, like in the meeting that we had last winter. So this is great. Thank you for all these questions. And it looks like we're 3 minutes away. I would like to offer the opportunity. We have 3 minutes. Is there anybody out there that just has a burning question that you would like to ask by unmuting yourself, introducing yourself quickly, and just asking a question? Okay, excellent. That's awesome. So I'm going to give you back 1 minute of your life so you can go back and get a drink or let the dog out.
Dave,
Yes.
we got another question. How do you handle secondary effects of disasters? Can you see it in the live poll?
In the live poll, where is that?
Yep. Let me show the live poll.
Let's see. How do you handle secondary or tertiary effects of disasters? So this is open, right? So right now, Karen and I are addressing a lot of requests that are coming from this membership within the All Hazards Consortium, but it doesn't have to, right? We're the disaster life cycle cluster, so we can expand to look at anything. If we're looking at vulnerability to disease because of disasters, if we're, all of that stuff is open, and that opportunity exists if we can start to share data, because this is an example of bringing, let's just say, airborne illness from mosquitoes in Louisiana after a hurricane makes landfall. That could be a very useful data set that the power companies never asked for, or people never asked for. But if we show it to them, it could be very, very valuable, and one that really grows and becomes important. Just a small example, but please email me with your ideas and things like that, and we'll invite you into the Disaster Lifecycle Cluster. Please join by just connecting to the meeting first Thursday of every month. We really look forward to seeing you, and thank you very much for all your input. Really appreciate it. And Karen, if you have any last words, please.
Just a big thank you.
Great. Awesome.
Thanks to everyone.
Thanks everybody for joining. Have a good rest of your afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you may be joining us from.
Next up for everyone is networking in the Wonder Space. We will have that open more like 3:15, but you can go over there now if you're real eager. But if you need a quick break, take a quick break and then see us for some networking at 3:15 Eastern time or whatever time zone you're in. Bye, everybody.
That's great. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.